Hello, shortcuts. There's been a bit of radio silence. I've been away. Um, for those of you who are waiting, there won't be a list for a couple of weeks yet, but as it's last day of the year, I've prepared something special. I'm going to put a couple of videos out, maybe three, we'll see how we go, of my favorite discoveries of the year. So this isn't necessarily records that were released this year, although I think there might be one or two of those. This is just things that have come my way through the club or through talking to you or talking to other people or finding things myself. I've got my top 20 discoveries of the year. This video is 20 to 16, but this video also features Bubbling Under, some records that didn't quite make the cut that I still love. And on any given day, could have made my top 20 discoveries of 2023. So let's look at some of those that bubbled under, that didn't quite make the cut. I'm going to start with this. This is a record called After the Rain by Muddy Waters. Look at that sleeve, isn't that interesting? This is on the Cadet label. This is the US first press. This has been something I've been looking for a while and managed to find it. So this is the record that Muddy Waters released after what was easily the most controversial record of his career, and more of that later. So this was released in, I think it was 68 on Cadet. Now, Cadet had a kind of this idea that some traditional bluesmen could be made more psychedelic. And so this record is the second of his two attempts at psychedelic rock. And, you know, they're notorious. A lot of people don't like them, but I actually think this record's really good. And what I like about this record is it's nearly all original compositions by Morgan Morganfield, his real name. But this is a really interesting and cool record. It's a little bit more slowed down than the other psychedelic record, which is called Electric Mud, and as I said, more about that later. But I like it a lot. It didn't quite make the cut. This is... I'm still not sure about this record, but the quality of this pressing is undeniable. This is Asia by Steely Dan. Now, this comes up on my lists quite regularly, and, you know, rightfully so. It's definitely got its admirers, and this Japanese first press, in fact, I think there's going to be one on the opening list of January, is pretty astonishing. It is genuinely magnetic listening. It is just that the record is so pedantic and so pristine as to be almost unlikable to me. I just can't get but it is compelling. I don't know. It's an absolute enigma, that record, and the history around it is astonishing. The third record in my bubbling under is this. A lot of you know I love my funk music. This is Awakening by Pharaohs. It's I think it's 74 or 75, but it was a band put together by Morris White and a bunch of other people who went on to become Earth, Wind and Fire. But this is more Afro-funk. It's more rhythmic than the kind of soulful funk of Earth, Wind and Fire. And I think that's why I really like it. It kind of just surprised me. There's flugelhorns and, you know, African drums, tumbas and congas and cowbells and all that kind of stuff. But there's also covers of songs like Tracks of My Tears. But the one that just gets me is the last track, Great House, which is about 11 or 12 minutes long, has some kick-ass psychedelic acid rock guitar soloing. Not sure who that is, but it's Yehuda Ben Israel. Anyway, that was also Bubbling Under. There's two more Bubbling Unders. This is from this year. This is Chronicles of a Diamond by the Black Pumas. A duet, black and white man. I think they're from Texas. And they make really soulful and interesting pop soul music. This is their second album. The first had a song called Colors, which became a little bit more of a vinyl, or a viral hit. This one hasn't hit quite so hard. I certainly haven't heard as much talk about this. It hasn't been appearing in a lot of the end of year lists or anything like that. But I really, really like it. Yeah. So this Black Pumas, Chronicles of a Diamond. And the fifth last of the Bubbling Under is a record you will know. This is Abbey Road. Now, the reason I'm drawing your attention is this over here. In 1992, the Japanese released a series of Beatles reissues called Final Vinyl. It was on the 30th anniversary of the first single released by the Beatles. And they created this list. You can probably see there it says the Beatles 30th. And they made really high quality reissues, really high quality vinyl used. The early mono records are really interesting. But this Abbey Road, wowzers, it's so good. I mean, Abbey Road, my standard listening for Abbey Road is the Mobile Fidelity copy. This is obviously Japanese, so Japanese was brighter than the Mobile Fidelity. But I'm hearing a lot in Abbey Road that I've never heard before in that pressing. You'll probably see quite a few of those final vinyl records coming up in coming lists because I've requested more of them because they're very good. But this one's pretty interesting, and I've really enjoyed it this year. All right, so those are the Bubbling Under. I'm going to go from 20 through to 16 of my favorite releases of this year. All right, in 20th place is the UK first press of Tricky's Max and K, 1995. This was Tricky's debut album. And I remember I was in my third year at university, and the kind of trip hop era was there. But what was still absolutely dominant was the Britpop Oasis kind of Blur thing. This was obviously the year of What's the Story, Morning Glory. And I remember buying my end of year copy of NME and being absolutely blown away by the fact that NME made this record of the year 1995. And Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory was number 2. I remember that Grand Prix by Teenage Fanclub, which I also loved, was number 5. So that, yeah, an era of really great British music. And this, since this is very much the CD age, these records are hard to find. And in fact, I often find that 90s vinyl is pretty average. But this one's really good, but it's just such a odd record. I mean, Max and K, Tricky is completely atonal when it comes to singing, and also non-rhythmic. He's never on the beat. He has no idea of timing, but it creates an atmosphere. And it was, I suspect, a real challenge for the producer that he was working with. There's some great female vocals on here too. Martina Topley-Bird. I remember reading in NME at the time that she recorded all of her vocals first take. Anyway, it's a really, really cool record, and I was delighted to find it this year. I've been looking for it for a while. Got a bit of crackle, but I still love it. I think that pretty suits the music. So that's number 20. Number 19 is something very, very different. This was an out of the blue, just hit me like a train. I picked this up in a collection of US records that I bought right at the beginning of the year. and it's got a little cutout, which I think means that this was an import into Australia. And it's called Motorcycle by Lottie Golden. It was released in 1968, and it's very odd. Firstly, it is very much of its time. When I listen to this, I absolutely hear the 60s seeping out of every note. I do like the little thing in the background of obviously the incredible 60s mascara. It's got tracks like this, so typical track name. A lot like Lucifer, Celia said, long time loser. Or the Space Queens, Silky is sad. Get together with yourself. A lot of it is kind of stream of consciousness weirdness, but it's also got really interesting instrumentation, and her voice is, I'm not going to say she's a Aretha Franklin by any means, but I've enjoyed this record a lot, and it's got something interesting and quirky. So that was my number 19 discovery of the year. Now, number 18 is still very much available, albeit it is the second or maybe even third time that Vinyl Me Please have made a run at this record. They were the first vinyl club. In fact, their issue of this was the first time this record was ever released on vinyl. I think it has now been released on a wider label, but this is still the one to get. The 45 RPM, 2 times, double LP, Fiona Apple's Tidal, the Vinyl Me Please exclusive, made from the analog tapes, and by God, you can tell. The drum sound on this, it's so interesting, and each song, I mean, I believe she was a teenager when she wrote these songs, and they're really thoughtful and interesting. The instrumentation, even songs like Sullen Girl, the second track on side A. By the time that song finishes, there are about 15 production touches that just make me go, wow. And Criminal, the opening track on side 2, became a hit. The video is still wonderful. Andrew Slater was the producer on this one. I believe she self-produced a lot of her later records, and they're quite good. But this one, this pressing, first time I heard it was this year. My number 18 discovery of the year, Vinyl Me Please, is pressing of Tidal by Fiona Apple. It's so good. All right, so what's that? 18. Now we're at number 17. My number 17 of the year is this. It is the original motion picture soundtrack to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by Ennio Morricone. What can I say? This is the Japanese repress, turned up in one of my boxes halfway through the year. You can see on the back, you've got the classic kind of Clint stance. Sergio Leone's classic Western, one of the triumvirate of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, A Fistful of Dollars, and For a Few Dollars More, Clint Eastwood playing The Man with No Name. This soundtrack is utterly delightful. I am not a soundtrack person, but holy moly, this is wonderful. And that opening evocative kind of 5-note motif of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it works still now. And it's not my favorite. My favorite, though, is, well, I do like The Story of a Soldier, which opens side 2 with the English vocals and the harmonies, but the closing track, the trio, which I believe played over the closing titles, is an amazing piece of music. And to think that, I don't know, this is one of probably hundreds of soundtracks that he did across his astonishing life. But I'd never heard it until this year, and I love it. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. My number 17. Discovery of 2023. All right, the final slot in this particular video. The other videos will be published over the next few days. Number 16 is also still available. This is Duke Pearson's The Phantom. Now, this was released as a tone poet, I believe it was in 2020, and it sold out. You couldn't get it anywhere. Prices were silly. Until maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I noticed on Amazon that one popped up at, kind of reasonable money, or was it eBay? I can't remember now. And I thought, I better grab that. And little did I know that it had been reissued. For those of you who aren't aware, the tone poets are let me read this, make sure. They're cut directly from the analog tapes, recorded by Rudy Van Gelder, reissue supervised by Joe Harley, and mastered by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio, and manufactured by RTI. All that means is that it is super high quality. This is, particularly the opening track of this, is all about atmosphere and feel. Duke Pearson being a really wonderful pianist. And he surrounded himself by a band of 7 or 8 other people that play congos and giras and drums and bass, and you can hear a few different guitars at various different times. I think it's an absolutely delightful record, and I'm so pleased that it was redone. You can still find it. That is my number 16 record or discovery of 2023. All right, the other 15 to come in subsequent videos. Please let me know if you know any of these. If you have any comments or thoughts, just drop me a comment below. Thank you so much, as always.